I'm going to go ahead and call this work session to order on Title 28 review. Start with introduction, starting on this side. John Weddleton.
Crystal Kennedy.
Pete Peterson.
Austin Davidson.
Forrest Dunbar.
Susanna Franz.
Felix Rivera.
Barbara Jones, municipal clerk. Peggy McPherson, municipal attorney.
All right.
Chris Constance.
Yeah. All right. So I don't know who wants to get us started on this. I don't know, Mr. Peterson, you do, or Mr. Gates, or Ms. Jones, or probably don't have you talk too much, Ms. Jones. Go ahead, Mr. Gates.
I'll start. It's really interesting and Ms. Jones. So just just a preface to this. We've worked on this for over a year, so we had a drafting book include regularly, monthly, sometimes bi-weekly, once in a while weekly. And our book include for experts in the elections. We have Ms. Jones and the election coordinator, Amy Solberg, and their collective experience in 2 regular vote by mail elections and special election in using mail. The feedback they've gotten from their workers and so forth. And Dennis Wheeler, who's a contractor with RBI, who's very knowledgeable about municipal elections, since he used to be our reporter as well. Mr. Will Pearson and myself, so that was our drafting group. And we went through all of Title 28 and all the changes we wanted to update some language just for clarification in order to make it easy to read, and some to update the terminology and so forth. And so I'm not going to a few things you see throughout this ordinance. We first went to vote by mayor elections in 2018. We amended the code to adjust so we can conduct that. And now we're sort of like in our next phase to convert most of our Title 28 to not vote by mail. It's our primary way of conducting elections. And for percentage-based elections, we're still retaining it in our code. But we do see that throughout here. So one general change we see is getting rid of the word percent and instead using polling location. And that's throughout this whole document. And we're also changing from, well, actually, some sections talked about a process, and we've sort of broken down to some sections with having to say if it's voting by polling location, if it's voting by mail, or if it's sometimes accessible vote centers. So I guess any other general changes that we could mention that throughout the document?
I could just say that our guiding principle was really that we were paging through the document now that we have done vote by mail several times to like make the code really match what is happening and catch places where there's really things that now like our team has learned need to be tweaked or need to be modernized or updated. It was sort of a refresh now that we actually have done vote by mail and know how it works.
Okay. Any questions? So, anything else to present on this?
Yes, that's I would walk through the ordinance roughly kind of quickly.
Okay.
I guess first I would say this ordinance is set for public hearing February 11th, and so there was some time. And also, I sort of put this out there before I really thought it was ready. I think it's very close to ready. But I do expect an S version and some tweaks here and there. So if you spot something that needs to be changed, you let me know sooner rather than later. We might have the S version before the February 11th regular agenda deadline. So with that, I guess I'll have some changes as we go through. And you probably noticed that we submitted the ordinance, but we don't have an name, and we also will have a crosswalk attached to our summary. And we started a draft of the crosswalk that will help understand what's being changed and leave some notes on this as well. And you can expect that. So with that, I guess I'll go through the document. And I know that we're scheduled until 1:30, so I will try to skip through some sections that just have those general changes that we just mentioned. So with that, I guess page 1, we have our definitions section in. Some is just updating language. One definition is defining by lot. And we had questions about what that means when there's a twilight and you solve it by lot. Yeah, I'm not found definition online. It's not pretty clear, so I put it in there. Next we have actually section 2 on page 2, just down to chapter 2850. We just mentioned here we did have some changes in September to chapter 2020 and 2030 about the time for elections, bills, and items. So we handed that those chapters already. So here 2850 operation of closed and accessible road centers, so that is the same. A lot of things are to fit our actual practice in conducting elections. So the election officials section changed so that it aligns more with our ethics code and actually cross-references the ethics code. So it's different terminology here, like familial relationship. The ethics code uses immediate family, so we've changed that language here. Page 3, the election supplies and equipment. We're deleting that provision. It's not really necessary to go into that level of detail. It's more of an administrative thing that the coach's office does to conduct it. So, yes.
Can you help me understand how the difference definition is there, or can you provide for us at some point what 1511580 is? How the state
that's the ethics code definition of immediate family, and I can look and see what exactly it is. It's more or less the same. Maybe Dennis knows off the top of her head about how we define immediate family in the ethics code. We're essentially trying to just use the same definition throughout code, rather than having ever so slightly different definitions of family in each title of the code. If you want to know what that says, I can look for it as Mr. Gates proceeds.
Thank you.
So personal link about. So page 3 to review supplies and equipment. That's something the cook's office can handle without needing it about. The hours, just making language consistent, and exception, medical discussion by elected officials. Also, it's just more clarifying language. So, page 4, this we see our first substantive change here. And this is political persuasion, your polling locations, and you put in clear language about the self-exception. You heard that the state had a bill to adopt the self-exception. It was becoming very popular for people taking selfies of themselves about it and sending to the family friends, sharing on social media. And they have to do it for the house, different house, but I've adopted their language and put it in here, and you see it also in another section. And the intent is basically say rules about having campaign signs and so forth, in polling locations or drop boxes. 200 feet within polling locations, it's within 50 feet within drop box. So you can take your selfie and you can send it on social media, but you can't go around showing your picture of people within 200 feet, within 50 feet of a drop box. So that's sort of the distinction and how we are allowing that.
I do have the text of 115.180 if you want to go that. Immediate family considered to 115.180 means the spouse, child, including a stepchild and an adoptive child, parent, sibling, grandparent, aunt, or uncle of the person, a parent or sibling of the person's spouse, and any member of the person's household.
Ms. Alto?
I think we're missing maybe one person to consider, is if you had legal rights over anybody, like guardianship. I mean, I could see that circumstance being, but I don't know. I guess they wouldn't be a qualified poll worker at that point, probably, because they wouldn't be. I don't know.
If they were the person who had a guardian over them, they probably would not be a qualified poll worker. They could be a minor, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
no, they could be an adult.
They could be an adult. Oh yeah, true. So. I don't know. That's a good question. But I think that's a Title I change as opposed to, this was due mainly just to say, we're going to cross-reference that definition as opposed to, so if we change that definition, it'll then apply across the board in the code as opposed to us having different definitions of family for different types of ethical situations, which to me makes no sense.
Thank you.
Coming time to our city ethics officer.
By the way, a much more thorough definition of it, yours is in the donated leave section of our first
Really well.
Why do we always close these meetings? Are we just trying to open any windows?
Good question. We'll answer that one later.
Yeah. Can I let the light in? Just the power forms. Oh, for now.
Go ahead.
So the exception, so on page 4, going down, or the next section, like I mentioned, we're using some subsection, having spoken about body location, go by the subsection. So on page 5, 20, 50, 70, we've got 2 subsections. We're mostly adding these to address the common situations that you have a voter and it has an issue, you need a question about it, and it's sort of in meetings and it's easy for anyone to follow. What do you do in the first 2 minutes of sections proposals? So, 48, we have some language that helps, I guess, for common to see some variant to someone's name or hacking that maybe the voter register doesn't exactly match the name on their ID or signed it. And we have these dialogues in casting. So, 28, 55 section. And again, it just is more clarifying process for when to give someone what to do. They're not in the voter registration database when you give them a question about it and so forth. Let's see. So page 6, questioning voters' qualification. This subsection B and all of these situations that are new here is just clarity from the election workers' experience and how they've dealt with situations in the past. Let's see, the next subsection, 2050, 100, the disposition of questioned ballots, and this is just again some clarifying language. What to do with them, how many questioned ballots separately, just not just current practice. And 2850, 110, voter identification at polling locations. What identification is acceptable for someone to present to get their ballot to show that it says in the vote center? You didn't receive it in the mail and you go in one. And what we've done here is just match what it says in state law. So we want to be consistent with state law in that regard. It seems pretty safe to do so. So this language just matches state law exactly to which. The next subsection 285120 is just reorganizing headings for polling location versus voting there versus voting at accessible vote centers. And then the new subsections at the top of page 8 are just following the processes that they've used. And I believe that these subsections are maybe copied and new language from a section that's been reviewed that you can see on page 10. This whole section, 2050, 150 is reviewed. That language just moved here, so it's in one piece. There are 3 different situations: polling location, vote by mail, accessible vote center, instead of having them in 2 sections separated in the code. So it doesn't really change the substance of how these situations are landed. Next, 2050, 130, assisting the voter at polling location or accessible vote centers. And again, it's just clarifying and really subsection B. I think again just is taking language from another part of the code and putting it here where it fits better. It's more for the structure of the code, so it flows in terms of how these process election. Clarifies the duty of election officials or others to assist voters at accessible vote centers. 2850, 140, increasing ballots. And this just clarifies rules at polling locations or in a vote by mail election for providing vote placement ballots and maintaining those records. Who they've given to tracking placement ballots, so you know, people voting twice. Page 10, I mentioned that we were repealing that section and just the section from. The next page is at the top, just clarifying language in 285170. This is the second part of the selfie exception about exhibiting your mock ballot at the polling location, the accessible vote center, and same thing. Exhibit it right now. You can send out a little picture on social media. 285180 is clarifying language. We have the election closure procedures on page 12. This will check the election workers, election coordinator of the action we do, and just make sure the language matches what we do now for closing drop offices, accessible vote centers, and the other elections. 285210, we've changed language to polling location instead of percent, and page 14, 285100. This is more poll watchers to observers. We have two terms for two different situations, but it really makes sense to use one term. Observers for both those that are watching the polls and those that are observing the election counting and balloting in the review process. They go through the same training, have the same requirements. So we're just using one term, observers, and you see that change throughout this section. At the bottom of page 53, we have a little more requirements and procedures towards observers, and some of those have been practiced already in terms of the municipal clerk, have authority over the operation of the election center and who can come in, and whether observers have badges, where they can be to watch the counting and so forth. So we have to preserve the confidentiality of ballots and so forth. So some sections will be limited to just observers and not open to the public. So we have some rules here that the clerk manage that.
So, Mr. Hobson, quickly, that last line on page 15, is that supposed to be designated or is it really designed?
I'm sorry, that's typo. Designated.
Thank you.
Thank you. The spell check didn't touch that. I'm talking about
You hear that, John? That was called Weddletoning.
Oh, is that right?
Thank you.
Before we proceed too much further, I do have two questions. Might as well jump
Go
in.
ahead.
The first one is, do these changes, should this pass in February, take effect for this contest? So they'll be immediately in effect and will be the rule for our election. So there's nothing weird about us making votes on an election we're standing in?
I don't think so.
No, I believe that we need changes to sections that would priority, like not have the declaration of candidacies coming soon. We have our notices, vacancies published. We need those changes back in September.
And then back on the selfie exception, 285170 on page 11. So does that, the way I read it, it says they're banned. So no voter may exhibit a ballot to an election official or any other person so as to enable any person to ascertain how they voted. So that seems to continue to maintain the ban. Help me understand how that does it.
SCPI gives an exception, but it doesn't apply to a voter who shares a photo, video, or other image on social media. Me too. I apologize if I cut you off, Barbara. I was hoping to discern what you were trying to say. Spare your voice.
Well, but isn't the way that's written subject to the prohibition in or within?
And that's the idea there is that you're not supposed to
I get it.
show
At the
your,
polling
be like
place.
standing right outside of the ballot, or like we're going out and be like, look at how I voted, and like we're flailing it around 10 feet outside the polling location, but you can post it and then take your phone quietly and go. Is the idea.
Like you mentioned, we expect an S version if you have
Yeah,
suggestions.
he's phrasing suggestions.
Yeah, because it doesn't read like what I think is intended to me, but I'm not a lawyer, so sometimes I miss those details. Thank you. We can go on.
So, yeah,
Page 11, 2851. So
We're talking about physically present.
sorry.
No more than 2,000 residents or any other person physically present at the polling station. So it's a person. I think we talked about it.
Should we continue, or?
Yeah.
Okay, well, before
Go
we
ahead.
make a comment, I thought we had talked about, there was that Ethics and Election Committee meeting where it was like me, Pete, and Crystal, I think. And I thought we had talked about this a little bit, and we were talking about adding the words physically present or something in one of these. Maybe I just remember. Like, if you were to change subsection A, so it said, no voter may exhibit a ballot to an election official or any other person physically present at the polling station, so as to enable the person to ascertain. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, like you could exhibit it online, but just not someone who's physically present?
Because that is actually what the spirit of the rule is.
Yeah,
Right?
oh, certainly. I mean, I think that's I don't want to speak for Dean, but since he holds the pen, but I think that we're open to edit.
I think that would be fine. I would be added for a solution.
What's that?
I would be added for the S version.
Okay, I mean, as long as everybody's comfortable with that, but
Makes sense to me.
yeah. I also sort of the opinion that this was always sort of unenforceable vis-a-vis. That I think a First Amendment challenge would have knocked this down if we actually tried to stop someone from posting to Facebook, but regardless.
I think it just the language was written before that capability existed.
Yeah.
Right, absolutely.
So as applied, yeah.
Absolutely.
Mr. Schuett?
Well, and this may be what he's referring to, because in 2850-050 that talks about political persuasion in A2, there it uses the phrase physically display a photo, but in 2850-170B it used the term shares a photo with another person or on social media. So maybe, I don't know, maybe we can look at that and make those who use the same language and less.
All right, thank you. All right, looks like we'll investigate that section of language a little more. Please continue.
Okay, so please see notes. Thank you, Mr. Schuett. So I think we go back on page 16, and again, rules for the servers clarifying which leads and free accessible centers and the election center and serving election officials at work. We made sure we explicitly have language that the clerk could request assistance of law enforcement for that purpose. And we have in subsection page 16, line subsection page, to make it clearer that the observer shouldn't be bothering the election workers to actually read questions or something, but not to read dialogue. Subsection D is to be because we should incorporate that language for so that's the chapter 2850 about operation of polling locations and accessibility centers. Chapter 2860s used to be called early absentee special needs voting, and changing that to be called alternative voting in vote-based elections. Vote by mail, it stops early. It's a 2-week process, so we don't need early voting. It's just voting by mail. And absentee doesn't really apply anymore to a vote by mail system, because someone whose residence address is what determines what they vote for, what district they're in, and so forth. But for vote by mail, you can ask ballot be sent to a mailing address, so you don't need to send in absentee mailing address. So that language is being phased out pretty much, the early and absentee language, and that's mostly the basis for the changes from Section 3, Chapter 2860. So there's a lot of deletions here, and mostly all new parts for these directions. So I'm going to skip down to page 20 for special needs voting, 2860-40. Special needs voting will be modified language, or I guess modernized, and also clarify the procedures. They were somewhat confusing about who could provide assistance in special needs voting requests, and do that here and so forth on page 20, page 21, and in place deleted a lot of that language you see in the middle of page 21. So, let's see. Going on, I think, next substantive change. Excuse me. Page 22 is just clarifying language, and same on page 23, changing to poll-based and proceedings, so absentees. Page 24 is just clarifying language. We do have on page 24 the voting by facsimile or email, and we actually had some dialogue about the important change here to not allow voting by email, and that's not quite incorporated yet, so we need to see something in that version.
I know we have some serious email, some security concerns. We have Susie and her team have some serious security concerns about voting via email because it's essentially completely insecure. But I'll let Susie speak to that.
Yeah, just real quick, there's the part where we think the process now is they download a form, they fill out the form, and send the form back. But what that is, one, there's a whole bunch of PII on that form that we can't secure. It's got a combination of
person identifiable information. So it's like they're
sorry about that. So when we can't secure that, so if somebody sends it, it's vulnerable. Someone could intercept that email and take it someplace. We would have to know.
Isn't that kind of their problem, though? I mean,
It depends if they try to make it our problem. It's up to you. I mean,
There's a state bill now to prohibit accepting the vote by email, but we are still in state and local. We can still send them a ballot by email. We can't accept it as a cast ballot.
Okay.
so what was that? We can't accept it casted with
By email.
The
send
state
it by
bill
email.
right now,
To them.
the state
To them.
legislature has, that it's going to prohibit them from accepting a cast ballot by email.
So that's- but that's what
code
this
and
is.
state statute, they allow it.
Yeah, no, with these days it's pending at the state. They're looking at
pending. Okay.
And also, this matches best practice. My understanding when we talked about this was that everywhere else in the country, people are moving away from any kind of email acceptance of a ballot
Yeah,
because
because
also
we can't
the vote
hear.
is insecure. Like it's very much easier to like create an email that looks to us like it comes from a voter when it might be, I don't know, a Ukrainian.
Yeah, you get 10,000 votes for Putin. Next
Right,
election.
yeah, so be able to, and then when
Not that
someone
anyone
sends
knows
it, we
anything
can't
about it.
guarantee that it's gonna be received by us or challenged, but if the state is already challenging it.
On the record.
Yeah, they're not challenged.
So, if I might, on that question, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
What kind of alternatives are we contemplating for people who are in a real pinch? Because this system evolved, rarely used, never advertised, but was an option, and it did provide a needed opportunity for a small set of people, maybe a dozen or less in an election, And so are we coming up with an alternative, or are we just going to contemplate closing that door?
Well, I think we have two things, but can you say that?
Big policy decision that will be implemented this election
Okay.
should or should not be implemented this election. Okay, all right. I'm not agree with that. I think that it's I know there is a very small subset. I think when we talked about it, where our thinking was in the new vote by mail universe, there are a number of different options. It's not the same as it once was, where like if you suddenly are, find yourself hospitalized on the day of the election or something, there's no way for you to vote and you're disenfranchised. Now you're getting your ballot well in advance. You can vote at any time. We have an option where someone can assist you in doing your vote if for some reason you can't do it yourself. Like we have so many. Our thinking was the security risk that was relatively high, and the number of times when this should actually be your only way to vote should be almost nil, given the number of different opportunities for voting with our vote by mail system. So certainly, I think it's a bigger, for Barbara's note, it is a bigger policy decision we should think about and consider the various, both the disadvantages and the advantages of having that still in code. But when we were talking about it, our consensus was kind of that there's real concerns about the security of it, and we now exist in a universe where people's ability to vote at different times from different locations, from out of state, et cetera, are much broader than they were before, when you had to request an absentee ballot in advance, and there was, like all that system was much more cumbersome previously.
So just to follow up, I can recall at least two people, and I think the first vote by mail election, who were traveling for 5 weeks, and they weren't in the country, and the time when the ballots went out, and anywhere near when there was time, you couldn't, I don't remember exactly, send them their ballots foreign, or I forget how that worked out, but they were, the first time in some 60 years in Alaska, they didn't cast a ballot, is the complaint that I heard. And so, and I had recommended them to submit an email ballot, and so I imagine it's not nil, it might be next to nil, but there are circumstances that...
So it's certainly a balancing question. It's sort of what are the risks of getting, and then what are the, who I agree there's probably somebody for whom it is very, very useful. There's also, again, risks that come with it. So. But okay, I'll allow Dean to soldier on.
And I see that we are one thing more.
Yeah, if we could try to finish this up quick.
So I was on page 24 of the board of ethics meeting, and there's a change at the top of page 25 in economics. The person is in the request. We have cybersecurity training time for election personnel in section C. That would be important for that process. And then I think the rest is just outline language to notch practice. So the next chapter 2870 is the ballot envelope review. And here a lot of the changes are, again, just clarifying modernization and to notch the current practice. So page 26, clarifying language into subsection 3 in line 45 is something that we do, but not just practice, where we set aside rejected or challenged envelopes for the election commission. Yeah, we can talk about make sure that's here is sort of like instructions that you can quick to execute the election and ballot review. Ballot review standards, we just removed some, I guess, unnecessary language and especially clarifying standards. I don't believe we would change the review standards all that much in some sense. So, and I think the main point here is that, Ms. Jones, her excellency now, but 10 years from now, viewers can follow the cover 20 years from now, hopefully you'll be tired by then. So they can follow these things conducted by their election efficiently, effectively, and accurately. So, we did set aside the question ballot envelope review process as a new subsection, a new section, page 29. And again, it sort of refers to the whether question ballot is going to be disqualified or not, and then review it under the usual standards. So to process the question ballots. So section 7 at the bottom, page 29, chapter 2880 for counting of ballots. We've sort of restructured this.
The prior section was about envelopes. This section is about tabulating the actual ballot.
About calculating the actual. Yeah, we had, I guess.
So, 70 is about the envelopes. You know, you have to have the envelope correct. And then 80 is about after you open it and just scanning and tabulating the actual ballot.
Thank you for refreshing the new readout. Yeah. So chapter 2870 is about looking at the envelopes when they come in, right? And after you've qualified the voter and move the ballot, 2880 is about how to count the actual ballots, moving through the counting machine and so forth. And the new section 2805, it's just about the similar structure as 2887 and 2870. The first section is about what the rest of that chapter, then the process is over. So it doesn't really change anything in substance. Let's see. So 2810, again, some clarifying language. It makes a cross-reference to other sections instead of repeating language that's contained elsewhere. It's hard to read. We also have a new subsection C, middle of page 30, about equipment voters, including school clerks and authority to handle the situation as appropriate, given circumstances. In 2880, we make sure to add that the intent of the supervision and observation of counties serve that confidentiality. See the electronic counting, page 288050. This is just clarifying language and making it consistent throughout. So you see, or into a proposition question instead of a measure, just consistent terminology throughout this chapter. And so I guess I'm on page 32, the next chapter is public session of Canvas. This is where the election commissions reviews all challenged or rejected ballot envelopes and we adjudicate whether to review or accept them. And we have clarified that, well, some of it just moves some language around so it's clearer about the process. For example, we've deleted 288520, but that language is inserted in other places, in other sections in this chapter. So let's just clarifying the process. From page 33, 34, we made sure to make a reference to the assembly making a motion to reconsider when there's a motion to certify an election. So it's motions to reconsider on draw at that point. And yeah, I guess it's just clarifying language. And down section 9 for the election recount. Here, this recount application, we've reduced the number of days from 9 to 7. It actually just made more sense for that calendar. 7 days time frame for asking for a recount. And we did the same in the election contest, 7 days instead of 9. we have the deletion of subsection B on page 35. That's about typo, and that's actually just redundant. It's that similar language restrictions elsewhere. In form of application, section 2890.25, bottom of page 35, we've added in the subsection for automatic recount. And that's if there's a margin, if someone gives that margin of less than 25%, then that increases top mode. So if it's that close of a race, sort of make sure that the integrity of the election is served and public companies more than that people. You have two types of recounts.
I mean, we added the clarification that the municipal clerk should automatically initiate a recount if the margin drops below a certain level. I believe this wasn't totally clear in the code before, and we felt it was appropriate for there to be an automatic recount without requiring someone to ask it. It mirrors state policy, and we looked at other jurisdictions that had the same kind of question and added that language.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, Mr. Dunbar.
So I apologize if we're going to get there or if we already mentioned it, but I missed it. So if this automatic recount, so we have a runoff in mayoral races, we have a runoff system. If we have a recount or triggered on who gets into the runoff, how does that work in terms of the timing? So it's pretty tight, right, between when we figure out who is going to make the runoff and when the actual runoff occurs I mean, do you guys have enough time to do that with the vote by mail election? The clerk is shaking her head no for the record.
And runoff elections are very limited. We, in our charter, only allows a runoff election in the race for the mayor and not for assembly seats or school board seats. And just the mayor's race, normally a candidate doesn't win by more than 45% of the vote. So it doesn't matter how, well, if they're less than 25%, we will have a recount. But one of them has to be over 45% to have a runoff, around 45% to have a runoff.
Well, if you had many candidates and less than 0.5% separated, several of them, would that trigger a recount?
Mr. Dunbar, that's why you're looking on a charter amendment.
Okay.
Because the issue that you raised would make it very difficult.
Okay. But to be clear, but this would get triggered, right? This 0.5% difference. Is it only in assembly races? I don't see the. Sorry, I'm not on the right page. But
well, it would be in the top 2 or 3 vote getters in the mayoral.
Right. But it is much more likely in a mayoral, I think, if you had that first round. If you had 15 people, so they all get comparatively less of the vote. So several of them might actually be much closer. I mean, in fact, I think they even happened in the last 2 mayorals ago. We had 2 candidates that were quite close. And one, I don't know if it was 0.5 close, but they were quite close, and then one went on to the runoff and one didn't.
Yes, that would trigger a runoff.
Okay. A recount before the runoff to figure out who goes to the runoff. Yeah.
That wouldn't be all the way down the ballot, though, right? It would only be within the top candidates enough. Yeah. Okay, that works.
Well, would it? I mean,
as long as the code says that.
Does the code say top 2 or top 3 or?
Top 2.
Well, it has to be top 3, right? Because it's going to be the fight between the second and third to make it the top 2.
Yeah, exactly. So it's the top 2.
I think you make a good point, Mr. Dunbar. I should probably add some clarifying language here to address the situation that you mentioned in that subsection C, 0.5% margin. So just the top candidates.
Right. Because as written now, it could be any of the candidates in that scrum.
The bottom one. The bottom 2 triggers the base.
All right, let's keep going. Mr. Gates.
And keep going. Page 36. We just make sure to clarify who can apply for the recount. Who we give notice to recount the applicant, the affected candidates, sponsors, potentially effective initiative or referendum. We already do that, but it's not just current practice. So I'm trying to say it's who we give notice to recount the results. And then the procedure involves the election officials and the procedure for conducting the recount at the middle of page 36, excuse me. Again, just clarifying language. And then the bottom 28, 90, 50, make sure to clarify the process of conducting the recount without the election commission. Without it, doing the recount, bring it back to the election commission to begin use or certify the recount results. So, page 37, return of the deposit. We had, it sort of matches the current practice about return of the full deposit in subsection A, and subsection C is used about simply having some discretion to waive or refund, waive the deposit or refund full deposit for a recount in the interest of maintaining voter confidence in the election process. So sometimes there may be good reasons if we not well believe it is so it's the same reading looks at the whole situation and says they should not be paid for this recount. Determination of tie votes, just a minor change procedure. And then we have at the bottom section 10, bottom page 37, repeating all of chapter 28, 110, special elections by mail. All our elections are by mail, so we didn't need a chapter in the number.
That referred to just 2 percent.
Just 2.
There's this.
Yes, and that's correct. And just refer to elections. But we already have, even if you call it special election, using procedures we have on this side for versus for the vacant seat versus for so that chapters no longer necessary. 28, the top page 38 for the election commission. We modified qualification for election commission members slightly. For example, they have to be on a percent board, and that's yes, a higher sort of position in the process than just being an election. You have to be an election official, and not to be like the percent board type of seat for at least 10 years, which is up to at least 5 years. So the qualifications are, I guess, often a little bit, but not that much actually. And then it just clarifies things that the election officials can't do during their term. So campaigning on behalf of a candidate, but also positions or initiatives for the election. And then we have the compensation of election commissioners raised from 16 to 18 an hour. And then our last section 12, this is amendment to in 28-150 when there's an emergency situation, or if we have another admitted an election, the clerk has these emergency procedures, and we've just added this language to say not only what's enumerated here, the clerk can handle the situation that's necessary, and not just what's enumerated here, but saying but not limited to. And that's the end of this ordinance.
So I want to go through, because we're running out of time, a few process things, and then after that I'll gauge the appetite for maybe coming back to this at another time. So we have an S, and if we can be very brief with these answers, we have an S version coming. When is it gonna be to us?
We will get the S version by January 31st, I think.
Okay. Then when is this actually coming back before the body?
February 11th.
which bodies have reviewed this so far?
Well, we did have the Ethics and Elections Committee take a look at this, and we did meet with those, Mr. Peterson to go over our changes before that. Others?
Okay. And then who's going to look at anything in the S version? Are we going to send it back to Ethics and Elections, or are we going to send S version back to the full body?
I guess that depends on when it's completed and ready. If it's ready for the committee meetings, then we will definitely have it counted.
Okay. I know probably a lot of us have questions, and I know this is a lot for me to chew on. Any other thoughts before we wrap it up? Mr. Whittleton, and then I'll go to you, Mr. Peters.
So should we comment on this or wait for the S version?
I think in interest of time, email comments to me and Ms. Jones. I was in this with Kirsten, but I'm not sure if she was going to be able to answer them for very long. But if we comment on some questions and we compile those, and I assume that we probably have another work session for February 11th where we can go through comments received and changes in the S and take my questions.
Okay. Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And so I don't know whether the potential amendments are just clarifying amendments or substantial. But from what I heard today, I didn't hear a whole lot of objections to changes we made, unless people aren't speaking up.
Well, I think this is a lot for some of us who haven't been in a committee to review it. So I know for me, I need to sit down with this and reread it. Yeah.
In fact, if I might ask for a version marked draft, but that's shown in just plain language, not with all the markups. So I have both. Oh, you got it.
We have this crosswalk that we can do too.
Okay, great. That'll help a lot.
Thank you. All right, so
I think an AEM that goes with this ordinance, an ordinance like this, usually for me anyways, I would drop the section analysis and going through substantial changes, section by section, and I would try to have that for you. And I guess that was the project. We don't have an AEM this right now. We trying to get it on the agenda, and at the same time, I have a bunch of tax proposals to work on.
Absolutely, I understand, Mr. Bates.
Becky has lots of time.
We keep you busy. So, okay, so then I'll go ahead and Mr. Gates and Ms. Jones will email us additional information. We'll take time to look it over. We'll get an S version eventually. And then likely what will happen is scheduling a second work session so we could actually engage in dialogue about it. Okay, great. Thank you. It's a lot of work.